I sort of really appreciated what he said, and particularly I want to start with one of the points he made, and that was about Bill Poteat's presence. Because I remember distinctly it wasn't my first meeting with him. Of course, the first meeting, like most of you, is when you're interviewing or you go in and sign up, and he's very gracious in his office and nice guy. Treats you like, maybe you're worth something.
What year we're talking about now?
This is 1969, my first year, and I came to
66.
66. Thank you. Left in 69. I came to Duke, unlike Ed, very well prepared.
He was the second most prepared student.
That's right. And I'm not going to say who was the most prepared.
No.
It's the same guy you were referring to. But I actually was a good student. But it took me a long time. I didn't start out a good student, but by the time I actually arrived at Duke, I'd gone to like 4 different schools and written enough papers that I knew how to do a course, so I could actually do well. I had a good memory. I knew how to read a book and take notes. I sat on the front row. I had a church history professor at seminary who did not understand that the printing press had been invented, and so he read his notes and we copied them. And he read fast. And I remember this guy. One day, we had bells. They opened with prayer, and the bells ended us, just like in the bells of St. Mary. And he stopped in mid-sentence, I guarantee you, and walked out of the room, and the next day walked in, opened up, and after the prayer, started right there.
Mid-sentence.
So I wrote down. So I wrote down notes. I had copious notes, and I could, with most courses, I could do really well if you exclude chemistry.
What school was this?
Southern Seminary in Louisville.
Okay. Which, was that Presbyterian or Baptist?
Baptist. Do I look like a Presbyterian? Baptist. No, I can understand it. We're Calvinists. There's a certain look. But anyway, my point is, I actually was a good student. I was a little nervous because I met all these folks from Yale and Harvard, and they scared the hell out of me. I thought, what the crap am I doing? But I actually thought I could do well. Now, I want to say this. Although Ed says he wasn't prepared, he's very modest, and I said I was prepared, it did not do me any good. Because I was in the same boat Ed was. I did not have any idea what was going on when I sat, and I did take that course in existentialism that he missed out on. Ben and I, and I don't know, maybe Milton was in there. And I remember I was sort of sitting there trying to figure out what the heck was going on, and in awe kind of the man. And one time, I don't know, he happened to notice me. which was my mistake. Which I did not know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, but it was too late. He already was coming, and he came up to me, and he said, did we read either or in that class?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it was, and you know what the heck, try to read either or. So, I was married. You shouldn't be reading either or. So he looked at me and he said, Haddox, can you tell me who you are? I said, hell yes. No. I wish I had. But I didn't. I was too scared. So what I said, I drew upon my broad reservoir of philosophical learning, and I reached way back where you reach, and pulled out Peter Strauss. You know Strauss.
Peter, yeah.
Strawson wrote a book called Individuals, an Essay in Descriptive Metaphysics, right? And in there he's trying to recover metaphysics and doing it within an empirical groundwork. So I knew him pretty well because I just got through studying him for a master's degree in philosophy. So I sort of gave Poteat a Strawson-like definition of a list of all of the predicates that would be physical, chemical, behavioral, personal, that are all tied, and they're personal because they're all tied to one biological entity locating one and only one spatio-temporal time. I tied the bow.
And he tied the noose.
And he just looked at me. And he said, Haddox? Because he always called, I don't know about the rest of you, but he always called us by the last name until we kind of got, I don't know what, we got older. But he said, Haddox, is that who you really are? And I just sat there and I didn't say anything. But I realized, holy crap, I don't have the faintest idea who I am. And what struck me was that that was a question that he didn't want an answer to, but he sure wanted me to hear it. You know, there are questions you don't want answers to. You want the person to hear the question. And his presence, I think, I was trying to sit here and think the other night about what is it that Bill Poteat's teaching meant to me and to all of us who studied with him. And it seems to me, and I kept thinking about the word evoke or invoke, or I was trying to decide whether teaching was invocation or evocation, but whatever it is, it was a kind of come out wherever you are. And that's what he was doing to me, and I didn't want to come out. I gave it out a Strawson is not appearing in all that stuff, you know, and what I think in all of his classes, whether they were courses on where you had 25, 30 people, whether you had a seminar with 15 around the table, whether you were 4 people sitting in his living room or one person working on a dissertation with him, he always presented himself in such a way that sort of demanded that you appear. I thought about this when you were talking about the space of appearances. The space of appearances was not an idea for Bill, it was his life. He dwelt in it. I also thought about it when there was a discussion about did he really like the academy. My thought is he loved the academy in the sense that it was the only place where it allowed him to do that. Now, he didn't like the AAR and the APA and some of the stuff, but the academy was the place where we can still appear to each other if we dare. I mean, we don't do it a lot, but, and I think of all of his classes, I mean, you know, Ed ran through the fact that there wasn't any syllabus and there wasn't clear assignments and most people didn't know what was going on. But by golly, what we were doing was gathering and appearing and trying to think together and forming a community of learning. I learned what a community of learning was from Bill Poteat. And communities of learning don't just exist, they're formed. And he formed them. He formed them with me. And that's one thing that sticks out in my mind to follow up with what Ed said. And I do agree with him about papers. We'd always have to write one-page papers. And no, I remember now.
There were like 3 or 4 pages.
Well, I know Ed. I know Dale could never write just one page. But he wanted one page. And in fact, I remember him one time asking for a 100-word essay. Wasn't it?
CC 16, that was the standard assignment.
100 words at one time, if I recall. But the point is, I always remember Charlie Brown and Linus were talking, and one of them, Charlie Brown, had an assignment. He had to write a 500-word essay on our flag.
Right.
And remember, and he said, well, how am I going to do that? He said, well, Linus says, it's easy. Write write 150 words on flags in general, and then write another 50 words on the colors of the flag, and then you only got 50 words left. Well, that's the way most of us write. Well, one of the things about those short papers is you'd write, I'd write out something, and then it'd be 3 pages, and then how do you cut that thing down? We'd work on it, cut it down. There it is. Try to make a point, read it, and there he'd go. It wasn't, I agree with you that it was the occasion for the beginning of a conversation, but it was never, you never knew.
It wasn't predictable conversation.
It was a burnt offering. That's what it was. And and once you can, at first it's disconcerting, but then you're freed up. You're freed up, and it was hard for me. I was born tight. The doctor. I came popping out of that womb, and I slid right off the table and hit the ground, and I've been tight ever since. It's hard for me to loosen up. I want to know where I am. But Poteat could kind of. Are you with me here?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes,
Okay.
Sam.
Let's see. I think. Oh, and the other thing that then I'm done. Go to bed. I've talked enough. The other thing that struck me about Bill Poteat, because I did not know him. I wasn't as close to him as some others. I was just a student. But what struck me is he knew his students better than they thought he did. And he knew me better than I ever thought he did. And one of the signs is when it comes time to write the dissertation, and all of his students, and there was a bunch of us guys come in, and they were all guys at that time, except BJ. And BJ, I don't think BJ was his student for dissertation. Us guys, he'd meet with us, and for some reason we'd come out with a dissertation topic that fit us. I mean, I went in there to talk to him about a dissertation, and I was thinking about something like, I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. After a conversation with him, he suggested to me, why don't you read John McMurray? This is a guy, and it was absolutely the perfect thing for me. I went away and read two or three books by John McMurray and met him and said, yeah, this is the guy. He knew it. Same way with Ben and Ed and Milton and on it and Dale. He knew his students. And one final thing, when I retired, or maybe it was when I went to the dean's office where you have access to files. I don't know why, we were cleaning out files and I happened to run across my file on me. And it was the file that they keep, in case the FBI comes looking for you. And in that file was the recommendation letter from Bill Poteat about me. It was kind of funny. He was a funny guy. It was a funny letter. And but he actually understood me. I read that letter and I said, what? This guy actually understands me, even though I didn't think he did. I mean, I didn't think he knew me. I was a student. So he was a very perceptive guy. He knew his students. He knew what to do. He knew how hard to push and when to back off. I think he was always attending to creating a community of learning. And that's what I take away from that. Beth?
Okay. Well, I was at Duke from 1986 to 1990, and I also went to Southern Seminary and graduated from there in 1985. And then after I finished at Southern, I was up in Washington, D.C. in this volunteer service community sponsored by the Washington Cathedral. And so there were 6 of us living in community together. And I guess it was in the spring, this interesting man came to talk to us. I think it was supposed to be about Walker Percy. But anyway, it was Taylor Scott. And I didn't know who he was from Adam. And I don't remember a whole lot about the occasion except that he riled everybody up in the community. And we were all like, it was all like, what are you doing? Everybody just got all riled up. But he also said, in passing, he talked about Poteat. And so that was my first encounter with him was through Taylor Scott. And I don't remember what he said, but I remember thinking, what an interesting person. I mean, he sounds like a really interesting person. And I believe I'd already been accepted to Duke at that time. So I went there, and I'm pretty sure, I meant to look this up in my files, but I didn't. In the first semester, I did something with Poteat, I believe over a reading, I don't know if it was Polanyian Meditations, but I was in the seminar, the last seminar he taught in 1987 on Wittgenstein. And I had read Polanyian Meditations. I was trying my heart. I was a good student. I was trying my heart, pouring my heart out, and trying everything I possibly could to understand what was going on. And we were having this one discussion on Wittgenstein, and it had sort of gone off in the direction of how would you go talk to the president of South Africa at the time, who supported apartheid, Botha, I think was his name. And so everybody said, well, how would you go talk to him? Don't you need something to go, something that you can both appeal to that will help you persuade him to see what he's doing is wrong? And well, what can you appeal to? And Poteat, this is another one of these notes, he looked at me and he said, Beth, because your mother told you, but that's not good enough for you, is it? And I, at the time, and it silenced me, but it wasn't because I was offended by his directness. It was because I had this feeling that I had absolutely no clue as to what he was talking about. And I felt very discouraged, because it was like I had tried so hard, and, and suddenly, I mean, where in the world am I, with this? So anyway, I was like, I didn't say anything else, and I walked out of the seminar, and hear Poteat, so I hear him walking behind me. Beth, it's a deep voice. I mean, I didn't mean to offend you, and then I started crying. Okay, so I know, no, you don't start crying. I know. I wish I should have said, hell yeah, you offended me, but no, in retrospect. So, but don't crying in philosophy. Yeah, but anyway, it was just the kind of thing, though, I think that did cause me to think very profoundly about what I was looking for. And another comment I remember Poteat made to me along similar lines, it wasn't quite as sort of maybe aggressive or whatever, was that God had called me to a place where there are no foundations. And that's really stayed with me through my whole life. And even that, I'm not sure what it means. but I know it means something profound in the sense of sort of affirming my own call. So those kinds of comments in the context of teaching, and there were others really that were similar in many ways. Now, after Poteat retired, as many of you have probably already heard, and some in the room can speak to this as well, he continued teaching, and we just met at his house. So we either had tutorials there or independent studies. When I was finishing up my last year, we read chapters of dissertations. They're all just immeasurably helpful. And then in the context of that, and these are in the archives, I would leave my conversations with Poteat and think, what was it we were talking about? What did he say? So I decided to tape them. And it really struck me, I think, I don't know if Sam is here, but he was talking about, he was using the metaphor of a dance. And in some of those conversations, it really is very much like a dance, because you can, when I go back and listen to him, Poteat, whatever we're looking at, you can tell Poteat realizes that I haven't got what we're trying to get. And so he keeps, he's coming around all these different ways and trying to connect. So I think that really is, in terms of knowing your students and knowing how to reach them, very much a part of my experience as well. I did have,
We got, by the way, we got those recordings in the.
yeah.
Will those be digitized so we could listen? They are already digitized.
Yeah.
Can you say how you don't have your tears? Or did you repress that?
No, he was just, it didn't really faze him. He just, I remember he gave me a ride home in his convertible. So that got rid of my tears. No, but it was sort of like, it was just part of I don't, for him, it's just part of continuing to be, it didn't like, it faced. I mean, that is another thing I thought, in my own experience with Poteat, you bring I felt like I could bring all of really who I was. And some of it, quite frankly, got very bizarre at some points because of stuff going on in my life. It was completely unfazed by it. So I just found that as a part of what it meant for him to be committed and in relationship and covenantal with someone. Now, I did have this one in terms of Poteat as a teacher in the context of the religion department. In one class I was in, I was writing on Leonardo Boff, who is a liberation theologian, and I thought that it would be interesting to bring in some of Poteat's analysis into my paper. And the reason I wanted to bring Poteat in is because I thought he grounded things a lot more in terms of the reality of people's lives. And I'd been down to Nicaragua and lived with a family down there, and there were very existential reasons for them supporting certain parties or not, because their lives were on the line. They didn't care what the ideology was. So I sort of brought that in. But the professor, again, I mean, it's sort of, he, and I probably didn't represent Poteat by any means like he could have himself in this regard, but the professor said that I was lost in a haze of Poteatian mysticism. And, and he thought I had potential as a grad student, but I was lost in a haze of Poteatian mysticism. So that's always remained with me. At the time I was very angry about it, but anyway, and what's that? Yeah, very, very, that's right. Yeah, we're not mystical people. So, and Poteat also, I think, the story that Jim told the other day about the child falling into the well and be easier just to get another one, I think. And the outhouse, right. Yeah, it was the outhouse, yeah. Was it a well? But he also, remember, sort of told that story in regard to, the class I was in. It's not, yeah, in terms of, in particular, that professor. Yeah, and I think the only other thing I would say in terms of connections, one thing that helped me connect, in addition to the intrigue that Taylor Scott brought to the table, was just the fact that I knew the Poteat name very well because I'm a graduate of Wake Forest, where his great uncle was the president, so I knew that history. And his father was the pastor at Pullen Memorial in Raleigh, and my father was baptized there. So I felt also those kinds of connections as well, and I don't know if that also opened up, I guess, some doors of trust, perhaps, that were there in our relationship. So anyway, I consider, like I'm sure you do, a great gift to have had Poteat as a friend and a teacher.